So where are we really in this story? I want to burrow into energy just a little bit more because I told you it's really critically important. This is the linchpin to this entire story. Now, when we look at energy in the United Kingdom, we find that in this chart we're looking at red designates that the United Kingdom is a net importing country for energy, in this case petroleum. Yellow means they're exporting, right? And blue means there's some combination of the two. The United Kingdom turned import dependent again in 2005. That's exactly equivalent to what happened to the United States starting about in the early to mid 70s. So we look at this situation and we see this, again, that whole peak of production that we see there in that yellow part up through the UK story here, those are the North Sea fields. They came online, they were immense, they were hugely prolific, and they're in rapid decay at this point in time. The North Sea fields are producing about half what they used to produce at peak at this time. And so this situation for the United Kingdom suggests that they not only turned into an energy importer in 2005, but they permanently turned into an energy importer in 2005. And that's a situation that needs to be looked at and understood. This next chart that I'm going to show, this is the one that really shocked me when it came out. The International Energy Agency is an international body whose job it is to project energy demand and supply. And they do it across everything, electricity, coal, nuclear. But one of the pieces they look at is petroleum. And this chart really shocked me when it came out because this is in 2008. All the way up until 2007, the International Energy Agency had always projected how much oil we were going to get by using this very complicated formula. They would say, well, how much do the economists say we want the economy to grow? Okay, that's how much oil we'll have. In 2008, they did something different. They said, hey, what if we actually added up all the fields and said how much is coming out of them? So they actually did a fundamental bottom-up analysis. And when they did, they got this chart. And this chart really shocked me because it said a couple of things that I really were just absolutely unique and that I hadn't seen before. The first is that, I'm putting a line here up on 2010, which is where we are today. The first is that, look at the big blue spot on the bottom, that big blue wedge. That's crude oil from currently producing wells. That's a euphemism for cheap and easy. That's the stuff where you stick the straw in the ground and the stuff comes shooting out, and your job is to collect it. The next blue line that we would see, the next blue smear there, the light blue, that's from fields yet to be developed. Some of that might be cheap and easy, but not really. Most of that stuff is actually harder to get to. The Deepwater Horizon, for instance, was drilling after a formation that was 18,000 feet down in total. And if we completely tapped that reservoir, we would have gotten about 12 hours to 24 hours of global use of oil out of that. That's how much we were chasing. We are past peak for conventional oil. That this admission came out in 2008, came out in November, shocked me that we didn't see it actually on the front page of literally every major publication in the world. It was something you had to dig for, and it's actually one of the most profound charts that I've seen in a long time. And so when we look at this, we find out that we are past this peak, and even here there was a second thing that was shocking. If we look at the total amount, add up all those colors, and go to the far right, and we're in 2030, and you see that's at about 105 million barrels per day. Just in 2007, the IEA was projecting that we were going to get to 130 million barrels per day. So they completely trimmed back the amount that we were going to get. And since then, we have had a number of other agencies, particularly the International Task Force, the Industry Task Force on Peak Oil, which is a UK consortium of 5 companies, including Virgin, Richard Branson's group, companies that care about oil deeply and its availability. They did their own bottom-up analysis and asked the question, how much oil could we possibly get out of the ground as a flow rate? What would that look like? And they came up with a number that puts this cap on. They were said somewhere around 95 million barrels per day, but that's the cap. Now, this is a really interesting development because we need constant growth in petroleum in order to run our economy the way we expect it to run and are counting on it running. And this is a huge wrinkle in that story. We have a story now that says prudent adults can look at this data and can say that without some fundamental change in this data, we know that we are very, very close to peak at this point in time. And that's assuming we continue to invest enormous amounts of money and increasing amounts of money in exploration and discovery. So I want to raise this first Q, this quantity Q, and I want to say quantity of oil is important to this story, and that's the one you'll read about. How much oil is coming out of the ground? Is it 95 million barrels? Is it 105? Can we somehow sneak that to 120? quantity is important, but there's something else that's just as important that you won't read about as much yet. And here what I want to talk about is not how much money it costs to get oil out of the ground. I want to talk about how much energy it takes to get that oil out of the ground. I don't care if oil is $1 a barrel or $10 million a barrel. As soon as you're using 1 barrel of oil to find 1 barrel, you're just spinning your wheels. So this is what this chart is trying to step through here, is talk about, it's just a theoretical chart. But what it's saying is, how much energy does it take to get energy? And so if we look at this, the red part is the energy used to get energy. That's what we're investing. The green part then becomes the surplus energy that's available to society. That's the stuff we run our economy on. And we do all kinds of things with it, right? We drive our kids to soccer practice, we take trips to Norway, we do things with that. So the green part's what we care about. The red part is the part you have to invest to get it. Forget the dollar investment. I'm just talking energy investment again. And so when we look at this chart, we see that it crosses at 1 because, right, at time you're going, getting 1 out and putting 1 in, you're at basically a 0 return. And then these percentages up the side say, well, what's the percentage return? So at 50, all the way on the left, we're getting 50 barrels out for 1 barrel put in, 50 to 1. That means we're getting a 98% return for a 2% investment, 50 to 1. And what's interesting about this chart is we can start to plot things on it. We can say, well, how much energy were we getting back when we were exploring in the 30s? We were getting 100 to 1 returns. It was just nothing but green under there practically. And that's okay. By the 70s, it looks like we were somewhere in the range of maybe 25 to 1. It's still a huge amount of green under that story. So that's fine. You probably don't even notice anything is missing in this story yet. 1990, 18 to 1, 10 to 1, we're still in this range, but we're still up in this upper part of this curve. Again, this is not a linear curve. We don't just draw a straight line from the left down to the right. It trundles along and then drops off very rapidly. The deep water find that I was talking about, those where we're going 18, 20, 30,000 feet under the floor of the ocean, now we think that those are returning something closer to 3 to 1. That doesn't sound too bad, right? 3 to 1? But I want you to think about it this way. The green is the part that we arrange all of our economy in, all of the complexity, all of our job descriptions. Everything that we produce is in the green part. So if we have to suddenly start living just on deep water finds, we live in a world that looks like this. And it's a very different world. You can fit a lot less complex society into that green area than one where we have much more green above it. But what if we did biofuels? What if we did corn-based ethanol, which is something we've invested a huge amount of money in the United States? Well, that has a return of about 1.5 to 1. And so if we wanted to run our society on corn-based ethanol, this is the world we'd be living in. We'd be trying to cram all of our society into that little green part down there. And we'd be horribly confused if we just looked at it economically, because we'd say, gosh, it makes political sense. Farmers love it. It makes economic sense. We're pouring a bunch of money in, but it's not working. We don't know why. And the reason why is because we're not looking at the right part of the story. We need to be looking at the energy that we get back out. Again, the dollars don't matter. The dollars are just an abstraction we put on top of things afterwards. This is the story that really matters. So when we look at energy declines in terms of return, it means that quality is an issue. You will hear about and you will read that we have 2 Saudi Arabias locked in the tar shales, or the oil shales out in the West. That's true, but the energy return on those is horrible. So quality, when we're looking at our hopes and our dreams and say, well, there's the tar sands in Canada are great, the tar shales, we have all of these things, they have very poor net energy returns compared to the finds that we used to have. And so that's a critical part of this story. So it means that we can sort of sum this all up by saying we have an economy that must grow, and it is connected to an energy system that we can reasonably predict can't grow. And when we're looking at that can't grow part, I want you to think both about the quantity and the quality, because those are both critical components of this story. The quantity part we're reading more and more about. The quality part is still not part of our national or global narrative yet, but it will be coming.